At 3:12 in the morning, most people were surrendering to sleep. Ethan Cross was surrendering to something else. The glow of his laptop filled the darkness of his apartment. Another deadline, another unfinished task, another night where tomorrow was sacrificed for today. To everyone around him, Ethan looked disciplined, focused, ambitious. He was the person who stayed after everyone left, the person who answered messages when others were offline, the person who believed success belonged to those willing to do what others refused to do. And for a while, the world rewarded him for it. Ethan worked at a fast-growing technology startup. His ability to solve problems quickly made him valuable. His dedication made him noticeable. His willingness to sacrifice made people admire him. But admiration can hide a dangerous truth. Sometimes the qualities that make a person successful are the same qualities that eventually destroy them. Ethan had started believing a simple idea. The more he gave up, the more he would gain. An evening with friends became another work session. A full night of sleep became a few extra hours of progress. A quiet morning became another opportunity to get ahead. He was not forced into this lifestyle. That was what made it dangerous. He chose it every night. At first, the cost was invisible. A little more tired, a little less patient, a little harder to concentrate. Nothing dramatic, nothing impossible to ignore. And that was exactly why Ethan ignored it. The most dangerous problems are rarely the ones that announce themselves. They are the ones that quietly become normal. Weeks passed. The calendar on Ethan's wall slowly changed. The empty spaces disappeared. Every day became filled with meetings, deadlines, and unfinished promises. The calendar no longer represented his plans. It represented everything he was unable to escape. At work, small cracks began appearing. A detail he overlooked. A decision that took longer than usual. A mistake from a mind that was running without recovery. The strange part was, Ethan was working more than ever. Yet his results were becoming worse. That night, after another endless work session, Ethan finally closed his laptop. The apartment became silent. For the first time all day, there was nothing demanding his attention. No emails, no notifications, no deadlines. Only silence. And silence had become something Ethan no longer knew how to handle. He walked toward his bedroom. The clock showed 3:12 a.m., the same time it always seemed to reach before he finally stopped. He sat on the edge of his bed, exhausted, but unable to relax, because somewhere deep inside he felt guilty for resting. Then something unusual happened. The bedside lamp turned on. Ethan looked toward it. For a moment, he searched for a logical explanation. A faulty switch, an electrical problem, anything simple. But the room remained still. The lamp continued glowing, quietly, patiently, almost like it had been waiting. Ethan stared at the light, and strangely, the feeling that came over him was not fear. It was familiarity, because the message behind it was something he had already been telling himself for months. One more task, one more hour, one more sacrifice. So Ethan did what he had always done. He listened to ambition. He returned to his desk. He opened his laptop. And he borrowed another hour from tomorrow. What Ethan did not understand yet was that time is not something a person can simply borrow forever. Eventually, every debt comes due. The first mistake Ethan made was believing the extra hour was free. It never was. Every late night had a cost. Every missed moment of rest created a debt, and slowly that debt began collecting. At first, Ethan thought he had found an advantage. While others stopped working, he continued. While others rested, he pushed forward. He convinced himself that this was the difference between ordinary people and extraordinary ones. But he failed to notice something important. The people who move the furthest are not always the ones who push the hardest. They are the ones who know when to recover. The lamp became part of his routine, not because it frightened him, because it represented a decision. Every night, when Ethan reached the moment where he could finally stop, he found another reason to continue. A small improvement, a final adjustment, one more message, one more hour. The choice always looked harmless, and that was what made it powerful. Human beings rarely destroy themselves through one dramatic decision. More often, they do it through thousands of small choices that seem reasonable at the time. A skipped night of sleep, a postponed break, a promise to rest later, until later becomes a place that never arrives. Ethan's sleep debt continued growing. The hours disappeared from his nights. The energy disappeared from his days. His calendar became a record of everything he was chasing and everything he was losing. The strange thing was that Ethan still looked successful. His name was still respected. His work was still valued. People still saw the ambition. They did not see the exhaustion behind it. They did not see how difficult simple tasks had become. They did not see how much effort it took just to maintain the person everyone believed he was. Then the mistakes became harder to hide. A presentation that should have taken an hour took an entire day. A simple decision became impossible to make. A detail he would normally catch immediately slipped through. The same mind that once created solutions was now struggling to stay clear. Ethan began working longer to compensate, and that created the trap. The more exhausted he became, the more hours he added. The more hours he added, the less effective he became. And the less effective he became, the more he believed he needed to work. This was the illusion of burnout. It convinces people that the answer to exhaustion is more effort. It makes them fight the fire by adding more fuel. For the first time, Ethan started questioning the belief that had controlled him for years. Maybe the problem was not that he needed more time. Maybe the problem was that he had forgotten how to use time properly. Baltasar Gracián understood that human strength without wisdom becomes dangerous. A person can have ambition, discipline, determination, but without control, even the strongest qualities can become weaknesses. Ethan had spent years trying to become impossible to replace, but he had never considered the possibility that, in the process, he was replacing himself. The energetic person he used to be, the curious person, the person who created because he enjoyed creating. All of it was slowly disappearing beneath endless pressure. One evening, Ethan looked at his calendar. Every hour was occupied. Every day was planned. Every week was full. And yet, he felt further behind than ever. That was when he finally understood the truth. He was not running out of time. He was running out of himself. The lamp was never the real problem. The deadlines were not the real problem. The work was not the real problem. The real problem was the belief hiding underneath everything, that his value came from how much he could sacrifice. And once that belief was exposed, Ethan faced the hardest challenge of all. Not working harder, not proving himself, but learning how to stop. The hardest lessons are not the ones we learn from failure. They are the ones we learn when success stops feeling like success. For Ethan Cross, that moment had arrived. For years, he believed discipline meant saying yes. Yes to more work. Yes to more responsibility. Yes to every opportunity, even when he had nothing left to give. But he finally understood what ambition had hidden from him. Discipline is not only the ability to continue, it is also the wisdom to stop. Ethan did not change his life with one dramatic decision. The transformation started with a boundary. When the workday ended, he allowed it to end. At first, it felt uncomfortable. The unfinished tasks remained. The notifications continued. But Ethan learned that leaving something unfinished did not mean he was failing. Slowly, he worked fewer hours but achieved more. A rested mind noticed what exhaustion missed. A calm mind solved what pressure complicated. The talent that had always been inside him finally returned. The mistakes disappeared. The ideas came back. The confidence returned. Not the confidence of surviving another sleepless night, but the confidence of someone who understood his own limits. Ethan rebuilt his calendar. For the first time, it contained more than obligations. It contained space, time to think, time to recover, time to become someone beyond his work. Then something unexpected happened. The hours he saved from exhaustion created a new opportunity. Ethan had spent years solving problems inside one company, but those skills were valuable beyond the walls of his office. With a clearer mind and more control over his schedule, he began helping smaller businesses and startups, sharing his experience, providing advice, solving problems he already knew how to solve. A small consulting income slowly grew beside his main career. The irony was impossible to ignore. The thing Ethan feared most, slowing down, was the thing that allowed him to create more. He did not become successful because he sacrificed everything. He became more valuable because he stopped wasting himself. Months later, Ethan sat in the same apartment where the cycle had begun. The same desk, the same city outside the window, the same bedside lamp. But the meaning had changed. The lamp was no longer a reminder to keep going. It was a reminder of who Ethan used to be. The person who believed exhaustion was proof of commitment. The person who confused movement with progress. Gracian understood that human beings are often defeated by their own strengths. Courage without judgment becomes recklessness. Ambition without balance becomes obsession. Discipline without wisdom becomes a prison. Ethan finally discovered the hidden rule. The person who cannot rest cannot truly endure. Because every great pursuit requires energy, and energy must be protected. The world will always admire the person who works the longest, the person who never stops. But wisdom asks a different question. Not how much can you sacrifice, but what are you sacrificing for? Because time is not valuable only because it passes. Time is valuable because it becomes your life. And once it is gone, no amount of success can buy it back. Ethan spent years trying to gain more hours. In the end, he learned that the greatest use of time was not filling every moment. It was choosing the moments that truly mattered. Rest was never the opposite of ambition. It was the foundation that allowed ambition to survive. The fear that if he stopped, he would no longer be enough. But Ethan finally understood. His value was never measured by how much he could endure. It was measured by what he could create when he was whole. The Gracian Code. Subscribe for more stories exploring the hidden rules of human nature.